morning. My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout the Commonwealth. With 26 locations across Virginia, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Analyzing Today's Tasting Room Trends, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. Save the date for the next webinar in our Craft Beverage series, The State of Distribution Sales in 2024, August 28th at 11. We are recording today's presentation, and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted and the chat feature is turned off. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. We have also enabled a live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the Virginia SBDC Craft Beverage Assistance Program Manager, Chris Van Orden.
Thank you, Sheila. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this conversation about tasting room trends. As Sheila said, my name is Chris Van Orden. I'm the manager of the Craft Beverage Assistance Program here at the Virginia SBDC at George Mason University. The Craft Bev program is designed to provide industry-specific guidance to Virginia's craft beverage sector. Today's conversation will be a free-flowing discussion on the current state of play in tasting rooms. You can enter any questions that you have in the Q&A function. Please Q&A rather than chat, and we'll do our best to answer them all either during or after the webinar. So I am excited to welcome back today's speaker, Andrew Coplon, founder of Secret Hopper and Craft Beer Professionals. Andrew helps breweries nationwide create more memorable and profitable taproom experiences using data-based insights gathered from thousands of visits. He successfully built a community of 16,000 craft beer professionals dedicated to the growth and betterment of the industry across the U.S. And in September, Andrew is going to be organizing the inaugural Virginia Brewers Conference, which we'll talk about later on. But welcome back, Andrew.
Chris, it's always great to see you, and I hope we get to share a beer in person before too long. It has been a while.
It has. We are definitely overdue. Professional, I don't know, shortcomings, I guess. So today we're going to be talking about what's happening in the sort of tasting room, tap room space. And I was hoping that we could kind of think about how we got here, like where we are, the trajectory. I mean, this industry turns over a lot every year. What have you seen in the sort of years ramping up to where we're at right now?
Yeah, so Chris, I first got in the industry in 2017, and sometimes I feel like I just got in yesterday, but then looking back at everything that's happened since then, I mean, the industry's nearly doubled in size. And once again, I still feel sometimes like I'm new to it, but the industry now, we're nearly at 10,000 breweries across the state, across the country. We're about 350 plus right here in Virginia. And in 2017, for example, so many breweries, had the philosophy, if you brew it, they will come. You could make an okay beer, have an okay experience, probably in some sort of warehouse type building, and, maybe know how to run a business, and you could be mildly successful. Things have changed quite a bit since then. I mean, competition's definitely increased. A lot of it's been pandemic driven, but back in 2017, I think a lot of the conversation was, the competition was big beer. It was a us versus them mentality. And then it kind of became to like friendly competition within our own industry. Like at the end of the day, you want your brewery to be your community's number one choice. You don't want to be anyone's number two. So at that level of friendly competition. But now I truly believe, partially driven once again through pandemic times, people became more intentional when they're spending their money for a while. People were going out less. And when they were going out, they weren't just looking for a good beer. That was a must. If you're not making a quality product, then you're not going to last long. But people were looking for an overall experience. So no more was it you versus big beer, you versus the brewery around the corner. Brewery owners and tasting rooms and any place like that was competing against any place people may go for a social experience. So when people go out, opposed to a decade ago when people would just go, hey, where can I get a good beer? You'd have your standard list of your traditional beer options. Now you're going for so much more, Chris. I mean, you're going for the beer, of course, but you're going for the atmosphere. You're going for the staff engagement. There are so many more reasons why people are going out. And when we go out, and what I'm about to say, I kind of just started throwing this into my lingo recently. It's something I'm guilty of not saying enough. but we're in the hospitality business. And, in 2017, we weren't even using hospitality much in the beer space. I've always talked about how the little things can make a big difference. And I've focused on all those little aspects that add up to the big picture to make a successful taproom visit. But, no longer are we in the beer business or beverage business. We're in the experience business and we're in the hospitality space. And I think we really have to lean into that in the current state of things. Because at the end of the day, running a strong business, offering that high level of hospitality is going to be your greatest differentiator.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's it's an interesting thing to come from, right? Especially with the history of some of this stuff of, right, you're a producer first and foremost. You think about the product rather than the experience. But given the growing importance for breweries in particular of, your tap room, I think that Virginia's wine industry, in-person consumption, having people come to you has always been important. And so hospitality has been baked into that side of the industry. But breweries maybe were reluctant or didn't realize the importance of that. That's really something that I feel like maybe people are coming to reckon with now, huh?
I think they are. I
So
mean, as mentioned, like in the pandemic, you really had to focus hard on knowing how to run a business. So I think that was when it first
mhm.
started to happen, when they needed to invest more so in the human side of things. And we've seen a lot of changes, even just in the past couple of years from that. And I do think more and more brewery owners, taproom managers are focusing on creating that experience, because people, they're event driven these days. When people go out, it's no longer just the beer nerd we're trying to please. It's everyone they could potentially be bringing with them, from the, 5-year-old they have towing side to the person who doesn't even like beer. The audience is changing as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, kind of thinking about that, right, where we stand now, right? Broad strokes, what are you seeing in terms of performance, some of like the macro trends, the just what are you seeing in terms of that level setting before we dig into specifics?
Yeah, I mean, continuing with that conversation on like your audience, I think that one of the biggest differences, to repeat this, is it's not just the beer drinkers. You need to attract everyone. So often, brewery owners, managers, when you ask them, who's your audience? Oh, people who like beer. But you need
Mm.
to be a little more specific with who you're trying to get into your tap rooms, and you need to truly understand who your demographic is, because everybody's fighting for dollars. And when we look at the structure of tap rooms these days and activities that people are responding to, one thing they're really looking for is diversified offerings, Chris.
Mhm.
Diversified offerings in beverages. You got to have the beer, of course, but what kind of non-alcoholic options are you having there? Are you maybe expanding into spirits? Do you have hop water? Do you have more health conscious drinks, maybe a kombucha on hand? What are the beverage offerings you have that are keeping people in your tap room spending more money? And, I laugh about it sometimes, but I appreciated it as a dad. But I love it when they have a juice box sometimes, because if I can buy my kid that $2 juice box, I'm going to get to hang out a little bit longer and maybe have that second beer that I often don't get to have. So I think visitors definitely looking for those diversified offerings. And now it's almost funny, to kind of quote my kid again, when he uses the word brewery, he's like, Daddy, can we go to the brewery for dinner? He's almost using it interchangeably as the word restaurant. Breweries are
Mm.
becoming places you don't just go for a drink, whatever that drink may be, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, but you're going for dinner. As I mentioned earlier about the intentionality of things, when I'm going out, whether it's myself or you or people I know, how many of the boxes can we check off that fill everyone in our group's needs? And so often, food is something that people are looking for. And, at one point in tap rooms, food was, maybe there'll be a food truck, maybe there'll be something. It was more so a nice to have. But I would
Mhm.
argue now it's a must have. I mean, when I look at breweries that I'm going to go to, I'm almost assuming, Chris, that they actually have food. And if I make the mistake of them not having food, then I might be a little upset. So it's an expectation. And I think really understanding what visitors are looking for when they're going out is so important. So we've got, diversified beverages, we've got the need for food. And when you have food in your tap rooms too, it's so beneficial, because guests, they spend over 80% more when there's significant food options. So not only are you going to capture their money in the beverages they're going to spend, but they're going to sit down, their whole party's going to have a meal, and the tabs are going to be higher, your staff's going to make higher tips. It's a win for everybody because you're checking more boxes. But another thing that I really believe guests are looking for these days, not just in the beverage, not just the food, but a reason to come out. They're looking for
Mhm.
some sort of event. And events, they come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, an event could be something as simple as a Friday beer release. Hey, we're releasing this brand new Saison on Friday. You don't want to miss it. Or it could be, your standard trivia night, which every brewery under the sun or tap room is doing right now. Or it could be something greater, like, a Wednesday market, an anniversary party, a concert from a touring act. You really got to get creative with what you're doing. You need to know what they're looking for and find those events that resonate with your audience, because having that event box checked is huge. And so often with events, people are going to look at it as not just, okay, I'm going to grab a pint after work, but it's becoming an occasion. It has a little more gravitas to it. People are kind of getting more excited for it. And that's so important. And when you're looking at all these events, I really like almost like the throwing spaghetti at the fridge approach, just seeing what sticks. I mean, it's also very important that it aligns with your brand values, make sure it actually feels like it relates to your brand. But it's going to take a lot of time to figure out what's working these days, and talking to your guests, understanding their needs and what they want, and trying these events and seeing what works. It's so important. And to go into that for a minute, you need to get to know your guests. I mean, these are the people choosing to spend their money at your establishment. You need to talk to them, ask them what they would like to see. When you have an event, ask them their thoughts on this. And in doing so, it is your job to prepare and exceed their expectations, because if they come and you let them down, there's another brewery they can go to. But if you understand what they're looking for, you can best wow them. I mean, that's what it's all about, creating these wow experiences. You've got to have the great beer, but you've got to have the atmosphere, you got to have the staff. And when you get to the intersection of those three, I refer to it almost like the Venn diagram of taproom experience, Chris. You've got the beer, you've got the atmosphere, and you've got the engagement / hospitality. And the center of that experience, it really results in someone leaving a brewery not just saying, okay, that beer was really good, but you leave saying, wow, Chris was the best bartender I ever had. I can't wait to come back. And that becomes a motivation for future visits.
Yeah, not me. This is a
Maybe someday,
hypothetical, Chris.
maybe another life.
Nobody wants to see me in a hospitality context, but no, I think it's really an important lesson for people to learn, right? That we're not even just past the stage of the product alone is the draw. We're past the stage of even just, right, is it like, how are the vibes? But there also needs to be an additional draw. You need to account for the fact that there are going to be people who will make that choice. Okay, well, I need something for my non-drinker, whether it's a family member, whether it's a child, and being able to do that. I'm going to put a pin in the question about sort of tracking the performance side of these things, because I really like the idea of getting to know the consumers that are here. You get, the stakes are higher once the people are there. Well, how do you make sure that they had a good time, and how do you learn those lessons? But I wanted to ask if there are any when it comes to the sort of draw, like the types of things that are getting people out, are there any new trends, any new types of offerings that you're seeing particularly resonate with people? Something that maybe, relatively recent that we haven't seen before? Because, yeah, I mean, like you said, trivia has been around a long time. Are there any other kind of like new activities or draws that are resonating with audiences?
So there's not a one size fits all approach for any business in this. You got to know your audience and deliver what they're looking for. So there's a brewery near me here in Norfolk, Virginia. And normally it's myself grabbing my wife and my son saying, hey, you want to go to a brewery this Saturday? Check something out, grab a bite to eat. But there was a Saturday a couple months ago where they told me we're going to the brewery. So I'm like, okay, of course, I would love to go to the brewery. The activity of the day at this brewery, it was essentially a Disney princess themed day at the brewery. I'm shaking my head because it's sounded very, very ridiculous. Not my typical option I would choose to do on a Saturday afternoon. But I'm not going to complain, Chris, because it got my wife, my son, and I on a bike to head to the local brewery, which is a win on a beautiful day. So we get there. They had face painting. They had balloons. They had a bounce house. I mean, it was a lot to take in. And it almost got to the epitome of kid-friendly brewery experience in the best of ways when they brought the Disney princesses on stage and sang a song from Frozen. And Chris, I don't know how I felt at that very moment. I was almost shaking my head, but I was so thankful that this existed, because it gave my family an occasion to go out on a Saturday afternoon, enjoy the weather, have a few beers, and have a good time. It was so much more than a brewery experience. With that said, I'm not recommending or saying every brewery needs to be that over the top family friendly, but you do need to know what works for you. You know, that brewery, for example, they lean in so hard on that side of things that that has become their audience, and people know that they can
Mhm.
go hang out in their backyard on a weekend, and it's a safe space. Their kids can run around, the parents can safely have a few pints, and everybody has a great time. So you really need to know your audience. And one of the best suggestions I have for that is, you know, everybody at the brewery, you know who your regulars are. They're coming, they're
Mhm.
buying a pint, they're your biggest brand advocates. But how often is staff and owners asking what they would like to see? I think it's so important we just not understand their taste preferences with regard to what they like to drink, but what's going to make them come more. These are your most loyal fans, and I think it's so important to have those conversations. Hey, Chris, what would you like to see us try here? You know, what would make you want to come out on a Wednesday night? Because we have so many of those nights that are almost dead nights at the brewery. And one of my philosophies is really just try anything once. You've got that Wednesday night, you have the same 50 regulars who sit at the bar. What's that crazy idea you've been bouncing around in your head? And once again, there's not that one crazy idea every brewery can try. You only know what's going to work in your tap room. But try that idea you've wanted to try. Put the work behind it, plan it out. Don't just throw it on the Facebook event calendar and expect people to show up. You got to actually promote these events. We got to have a whole nother call on marketing practice for getting
Mhm.
actual butts and seats. But try that out on that slow night, because worst case, you're gonna have the same 5 regulars and you'll realize it might not be worth trying again. But what if you realize that weird, crazy idea, actually works and it brings in a brand new audience who may not have been exposed to your taproom before, but they've discovered you, they've discovered what you offer. Now it's an event that may be repeatable. Maybe it's a once a month event, maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's just a couple times a year, but you've found a potential new audience to bring in on a slow night. And I think that's so important because we got to get out of the box these days. I'm going to beat down pretty hard on the experience factor of breweries and tap rooms these days, but that's really what it is about. You need to
Mhm.
create that experience, and it can't just be that standard brewery vibe you can create everywhere. It has to be something that's going to separate you from the other businesses nearby and give people that motivation to choose you over them. And after saying that choose you over them mentality, it almost sounds a little evil sometimes because our industry is so based on collaboration. But you're here because you're running a business. You
Mhm.
have to get butts in seats. You have to get people spending. You have to get those tabs higher, and you have to give them a reason to come back. If you're not offering something unique, they're not going to come back. And to go into the engagement side of things, I do believe, your staff plays a huge role in creating that vibe we're talking about. And, vibe's another one of those words like hospitality we really weren't
Mhm.
using much. I actually led a panel conversation on, creating a vibe and the importance of atmosphere in brewery experiences just yesterday. But your staff plays a vital role in creating that vibe. And, when you go to a tap room and, that staff member is awkwardly looking at you, they're not speaking to you, they're waiting for you to order. That's not the experience we're craving these days. We want that engagement, even on a small, meaningful level. We want that human interaction component of it. And, there's a huge difference from when you don't get that level of engagement from your team from when you do. And, I love taproom data, Chris. It's been so fun,
Mhm.
wearing my secret hopper hat, looking at the data set we have over the years and just looking at it. When someone goes to a tap room for the first time, they receive a low level of engagement. We've all had that before when the person's barely going through the motions, not offering recommendations, not checking in a timely fashion. They're just treating you as someone to serve a pint across the bar. And that guest who has that experience in their first visit is only 45% likely to return and recommend that brewery or tap room. So pretty much, unless you are dragging me there for some sort of event, I'm never going back because there's so many other great options. But if I go to a business for the first time, I go to a brewery tap room for the first time, and you connect with me, you're engaging, you're teaching me about the brewery, you're telling me the story, you're making sure I find the right thing to drink. That guest who receives that high level of engagement, they're going to be 99% likely to return and tell their friends about that experience. Because I think at the end of the day, we crave connection. One thing I love about breweries is meeting strangers. You can go to a brewery, there's someone sitting next to me at the bar. We might not know we have anything in common besides the fact that we, like to enjoy a pint on a Friday afternoon. But that's the first step in bringing us together. And, your guests play a huge role in your taproom's vibe. One of my favorite things is to see strangers, you know, creating those conversations and becoming friends because of the space that a tap room has created. I think that's truly when you know you have created something successful. When your staff, not just your staff, but when your guests become your biggest brand advocates and want to form relationships because they see your place as a gathering place where they can come together, be themselves, and meet others that they want to enjoy and spend time with.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanted to highlight a couple of things that you mentioned here that I think this is why it's really important to have this conversation now. That's sort of like the maturing of the industry that we're seeing, right? Where it's the product is not enough. You need to think about this as a business. Like, yes, in the end, certainly when you look at how much money you have to raise to open up a production business, this is serious stuff. So thinking about it as a business, and there is actual competition now. It's not just, hey, we are still filling in gaps, right? Most of the market is relatively saturated. So every, guest that you get that guest isn't going somewhere else at this point. So we're talking about a maturing industry that needs to be thinking about, this as a business now, plus the overall market shift that happened during the pandemic. And now the sort of, okay, well, we're still figuring out what the new balance is going to be of, well, what's the mix of on and own premise sales and distribution, and like how much of the actual, the sales are coming from the beer or whatever itself versus all of the ancillary things, and how much of it is tickets and how much of it is whatever else. I think that we're really seeing this sharpening up of having to be more like intentional about these things. And that comes down to the right measuring these things, right? You can't change things that you're not really measuring, and thinking critically about who you are and where you fit in the marketplace. So I wanted to highlight that, something that you mentioned with the Disney Princess event. There are some companies here that might be thinking, oh, wow, what a cool idea. And there might be other people thinking, never in a million years would that fly at my spot. So thinking about, right, positioning yourself in a marketplace in an intentional way, and not just be like, hey, I love heavy metal, we're going to be a heavy metal brewery, but thinking about, well, is there a demand for this in the market? How do I know that? So can you talk a little bit about how you position your company for a specific audience and making sure that there's enough of an audience there, and how that fits into tasting room performance?
Yeah, so one question I love to ask brewery owners is, describe your brewery space in 5 words. Like, what do you aim to be? Like, if I were to meet you in an elevator and had literally 10 seconds to tell you about my tap room, what am I going to tell you? And so often brewery owners and managers and staff will say, oh, well, I want to be, a welcoming space with great beer. Okay, that's great. But doesn't everybody want to be the exact same thing? You don't want to be a space where people feel excluded or not comfortable. Comfortable is such a simple word, but it's something everybody is going for. So besides being comfortable and welcoming, you really need to know who you are, because when you know who you are yourself as an owner, your management understands it, your staff understands it, your guests then understand it. That is so important, just simply figuring out who you are and what's your pitch. That elevator pitch you want your guests to give to their friends when they're saying, I went to this awesome brewery on Saturday and here's when you need to come. And I think as we talk to brewery owners about that, is you get a little more specific. You become the kid-friendly brewery that hosts Disney theme events on weekends and donate to local organizations. You get a little more specific. You become a baseball themed brewery that attracts, a Gen Z millennial crowd to spend their Saturdays over the shared love of whatever it may be. You have to get a little more specific with what you do, because like you mentioned, Chris, the audience is different these days. A lot of the original generation of, traditional craft beer drinkers is changing, and they're getting a little bit older, and we need to look at how are we going to appeal to the younger generations out there. We hear a lot in the news about, Gen Z drinking less beer. Okay, they're drinking less beer, they're drinking other drinks, but if we want to survive at the end of the day, how can we attract this younger generation? And I think it's so important to look what they're demanding, what they want, and see how we can please them. I mean, that gets into the conversation again about the diversified offerings, the need for experiences. That younger generation is totally looking for that experience when they go there. And they want to spend money with brands that align with their values as well. So I think that's why it's so important too for businesses to, let people know what you stand for. I'm not saying take a political stance, but, have people understand what your mission is. And I
Hmm.
talked to a brewery yesterday. They're based out of Newport News, Virginia, and every Wednesday, I'm gonna get them. It's like do good, drink beer, something like that is their philosophy. Each Wednesday, they bring in a new nonprofit organization and encourage their audience to come, and they donate a portion of their sales from that night to their organization. But they lean in and making giving back an important part of their business model because they see the value in not that they just want to give back, but it's also valuable for them too because it's bringing new people into their tap room. And that's really where we need to look these days. We can't just keep serving the same people over and over again. We have to expand. We have to rethink our audience. Unless we're innovating, we're going to fall behind. And part of innovation, it is innovating with your audience and finding out, who the next generation of people who come into your tap room are and understanding what they want. And when you look at the younger generation, look at like, Gen Z and millennials. I mean, they're craving the family friendly experiences on the millennial side. The Gen Z is looking for all kinds of unique offerings. But we almost laugh about it and say, "Oh, Gen Z, they're not drinking a lot of beer." But I did a deep dive into generational spending habits in
Hmm.
breweries, and it's a massive set of data. I'm going to quote a couple things that I think were pretty interesting from it. But
Yeah.
when a boomer's come into a brewery, that tab is probably going to be the highest tab you're going to get. So those 2.5 people who are coming on that tab, they are going to spend a bit of money. But an interesting thing I found when we were looking at all the different age ranges was looking at Gen Zers. They might not be spending as much per person, but they're coming in larger groups. So when
Mm.
you look at the total party of people coming in the group of Gen Zers, they're actually spending more money as an overall party than the table of boomers. So while
Mm.
you might look at that person who's barely 21 years old at the end of the bar, they're not going to spend a whole lot of money, but then you realize they have 5 friends with them. That's an opportunity because they might not know a whole lot about beer. Only one of them might be a beer person. But if you take the time to educate and going back to understanding their needs, it could be their first tap room experience. They might not know how it works. It is your job as the person behind the bar, as the lead storyteller, to jump in and teach them about it and make it a memorable experience. Help them find what's right for them. And the education component, I mean, I've been preaching that for years, but it is so important to take the time to talk to your guest. Oh, I typically drink Blue Moon. Okay, well, we don't have Blue Moon, but you might like this.
Hmm.
Finding out what people really enjoy and taking the time to be patient with them. And that's why I truly love flights. I know a lot of people here today probably have love-hate relationships with flights, but simply we see that flights get people spending more money. When you get someone to start with a flight, the data shows that they're going to spend over 30% more than the people who aren't encouraged to start with a flight. And the reason being is you're helping someone find the right beverage for them. If I'm coming to a tap room for the first time and I order a pint of something that I don't really like, I'm probably a little less likely to order another. But if you
Mm.
give me a flight, walk me through it, teach me about it, I'm going to be much more willing to explore and find what's right for me. That way I know what I will invest a whole pint in. So that education piece is so huge. And I'm going to take a sip of water on that thought.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's it's really interesting to peek under the hood. And obviously you have a large data set, but everybody that has a point of sale system has access to some data. So like doing some of that analysis there, right? This is getting back to that treating it like a business. And figuring out that, hey, people who drink beer is not a good target customer here. You need, it's both too big, but it's also too small because you need to count other people and you need to add to that audience. And I think that this gets to something that I think is helpful, like, and some of it is the generational, which is developing customer profiles, saying, hey, I know what my company is. Here's who I appeal to. Here are the 5 personality types that I'm going to have. You put a name on them, and you could say, right, Willow, or I'm trying to think of a young person name, is a 24-year-old woman who travels in a pack of at least 6. They each come and they drink 2 beers, but they will come out for every event. And here's what they look like, and here's what their habits are. And this event is for, Willows and Jadens, but it's not for Hanks, right? Hanks aren't going to, my Hank profile is not going to be interested in this event. So I have this event for them. So crafting your offerings based on who you're trying to attract and making that data driven is really important for companies, because it's, it all, once you say it out loud, it all starts to make sense. You're like, yeah, I know exactly who that is. But until you do the work and you figure out, what does this person actually do? What behaviors are they evincing? What do they resonate with? It's just intuition. You need to put the sort of numbers behind it.
Yeah, understanding those personas is so important. And kind of going back to the data things, it's once
Yeah.
again, it sounds like common sense when we say use data while running your business. It does sound like common sense, but we found that so many people have access to a lot of this POS and brewery data, but they're not using it as much as they should. And we're in my craft beer professionals hat. When we first started doing a lot of educational sessions 7 years ago, I remember when I first saw the word technology start to appear more. As we would get proposals for all the conferences we did, I would track the trends that, were popping up more so than others. And first it was technology. Then we started to see data pop up a little bit. Then we started to see experience. Then we start to see efficiency pop up a little bit. And at the
Mm.
end of the day, a lot of these terms are the terms you kind of associate with running a strong business. And, they crept into all parts of it. Technology crept in the back of the brew house with like brewery management software. Then you started hearing it more, in the front of house. Same with data. You use the brew house data, but were you using front of house data as well? And I think data is a vital tool to run a successful business. And you need to figure out what numbers that you are most passionate about, what's going to help you see greater success, and look at them regularly. Share them with your team. Find ways to improve them. I mean, you can have all the data in the world, but if you're if you're not taking the time to actually use it and analyze it and plan ahead, then it's all for nothing.
Yeah. So speaking about like the use of data, right? Obviously, you have access to a greater kind of a more robust set of data, just given that you're going in and collecting different data points and able to get things. So I'd love to hear, any other things that you have, but I guess for the companies that are here and say, oh, I haven't really looked at my ring numbers. I haven't looked at my point of sale numbers, and they're saying, I'm seeing a reduction in sales, or my numbers aren't where they need to be. How would you recommend that they maybe for the first time diagnose specific issues and then develop strategies to improve sales or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so the data set that we have, Chris, we've been collecting taproom data from, we're a mystery shopping company for breweries. So we're going to send people in to have an experience at a brewery, and we're going to track a lot of data points. Our set's over 9,000 unique visits since 2017. So it's really fun to dive into. And you mentioned someone, having a reduction in taproom sales. I mean, you got to be looking at your data. And I'll give everybody 3 data points that kind of help look at different sides of your operation that I think are really valuable. First off, look at your average number of tabs. If on a Friday night you have, 100 tabs come through, but, a year ago you were seeing 200 tabs, what are you doing different? Is it perhaps a marketing problem there? If you're just getting butts and seats, if you're looking at the number of tabs, I think it really could come down to how you are marketing yourself. I mean, a lot of it's based on marketing to people outside your tap room, but once people come in too, how are you getting them a reason to come back? So number one, look at your average number of tabs, look at that historically, track it over time. That's a really important one. I also love to look at the average spend. For example, how much is the average person spending per tab? Is it going up? Is it going down? If it's going down, maybe you're missing out on upsell opportunities. Maybe you're missing out on encouraging people to have that other pint. The data shows with regards to encouraging people to have another beverage, on nearly 50% of taproom visits, staff's not saying, hey, Chris, would you like another? So simply asking little questions, upsell opportunities like, would you like another pint? Would you like to start with a flight? Would you like to take beer to go? If your average spend is going down, staying consistent, potentially consider upsell opportunities that can increase it a little bit. I mean, at the end of the day, all this comes down to is engagement and finding ways for your team to connect at a deeper level, because guests are going to spend more money. So we've got number of tabs, we've got average spend. One of my favorite metrics is actually tip percentage, because it embodies that engagement I talk about. If I'm the bartender behind the bar and I'm getting an average tip of 17%, and Chris, you're great at hospitality today, let's say you're getting 27%, Chris is
Mhm.
doing something right, and I probably need a little training on the back and say, hey, Andrew, let's walk you through these processes again. Here are a few tips to get your engagement up, because engagement corresponds 100% with tip percentage. Those staff members who engage at a higher level, they're going to get higher tips. Those who aren't taking the time to build those connections are going to get lower tips. So those are 3 of my favorite metrics to look at. And you can't just look at them one time. You need to track them over time, track them over the years, track them weekly, share them with your team. And when we're talking about data, don't just tell your team, okay, we'll sell more flights, sell more to-go beer, sell more extra pints to people. Give them a reason why. And it comes down to understanding what your team wants. Is your team working there because it's just a college job? Do they want to be your next taproom manager? Do they want to open their own spot one day? It's so important to understand their motivations. And at the end of the day, most people want to make more money. That's what we're seeing in the industry right now. So telling them, hey, if you're able to sell that crowler to a guest, they're going to tip $3.50 more. They're going to come back sooner. You're going to see the metrics that show that, hey, by doing this specific action, I'm personally going to benefit. And by your team benefiting, you're probably going to see higher tabs. You're going to see higher tips. They're going to be happier. The manager's going to have less trouble hiring new people. People are going to be coming back sooner. It's a trickle up effect when you get your team passionate about being the best brand advocates for you. But you got to tell them the why behind doing these things. You can't just say, I need you to do 10 different things when you're behind the bar. Get them focused on one thing at a time. This week, let's focus on flights. Let's encourage more flights. In a conversation I had yesterday, I had a taproom manager outside the Charlottesville area bragging about how many flights they serve on a Saturday afternoon. I've never heard a brewery owner manager talk about bragging about selling more flights on a weekend. But he was so passionate about it because he looked at every flight as an opportunity to convert that first time guest as into a regular. So he loved flights and he got his team excited to serve them. I asked him what his secret was. He said on Saturday afternoons, he literally brings one person in just to pour flights the entire day, because it's
Wow.
so important for them to have the time to build those relationships. So, it's important your team understand why you do these things. So give them a mission this week, sell more flights. Next week, say, hey, get a little bit better at saying, hey, Chris, would you like another pint? The following week, let's focus on to-go beer. And you also can't just tell them to do these things. You got to show them the data behind it, how it's impacting them. And often it takes rewarding them too. And when you talk to your team, you got to figure out what's going to motivate them best. Some people want a trophy. Some people want a gift card. Some people want to be publicly recognized. Some people simply like to see progress. Like, oh, I sold 2 flights last week. I sold 22 this week. That's awesome. I feel better about myself. Seeing that forward motion is really important. Some people also want opportunity. Seeing them climb the ranks of your company can be really meaningful to someone. So, while I do speak a lot about crafting that ultimate experience for the guest, it's arguably more important to understand your team's expectations and needs so you can craft that experience for them so they can have that sense of excitement working at your brewery or tap room that they has it resonate across the bar.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting to hear you mention some of these points about, right, the regularly looking at data, the motivating your team, all this stuff. These are strategies that any distribution or any company that's distributing is very comfortable with doing with their outside sales staff, right? I mean, this is how they are gold. They're often very highly commission based. So this is something that a lot of companies are already doing outside sales, right? But when it comes to in-house, for some reason, that part of the brain switches off of being like, well, this is direct sales. It's a softer, squishier thing and all that stuff. Like, well, no, this is, especially with the growing importance of on-premise sales, right? This is high margin. It's an overall shift of, your total sales. More of it's coming, in-house now. We should be applying those same strategies and techniques that you use for your outside sales staff in-house of, right? Here's what works. We're thinking about customer journey. And it's like, there's more than one way to get receipts out. You can have more people through the door, or you can get more people, buying like a higher rate, right? There's, in the end, if you're trying to get double your sales, twice as many people or twice as much money per person is the same thing. Well, how you get there is going to wind up being a very different strategy. So it can't just be, well, make twice as much money. Well, I want you to get each person to buy, a half beer more. Well, let's talk about what it takes to get there. It's not just, let's grow. Like, it's that kind of more intentional strategy is important.
Yeah, intentional is a key word. You can't just tell your team to sell more flights. You got to tell them how to do it, teach them how to do it. So often when people get hired to work at a brewery, I think it's assumed they know what to do, but every business is different. If someone worked at Chick-fil-A and they go to work at Wendy's, you're going to still take them through the training process of what your company stands for, all your processes. It's so important for people on your team to understand your company. Because when they understand what you stand for, how you do things, they can better be the brand advocate across the bar to your guests and get those guests spending more money and being that believer.
Yeah. And given how much, I mean, you're obviously not with a specific brewery, you have the sort of benefit of being zoomed out a level and having eyes on hundreds, perhaps thousands of tasting rooms and tap rooms a year. Are there any sort of top line shifts that you've seen when you're looking at these data? Is it that you're seeing, right, people spend more per visit? Are you seeing fewer visits per person? Is it, even when it comes to the staffing, is it harder for people to get staff, or are staff turning over more or less frequently? Are there any kind of macro trends that you see in the data?
I think on the brewery staff side of things, especially in the back of house and breweries, I know we're talking mainly tap room today,
Sure.
but working at a brewery is hard sometimes. And people, they don't just want to be given a pizza party for doing a good job. They want to make more money. They want to have more benefits. They want to have the opportunity to grow with the company. So it comes back to those staff expectations of understanding what your team works. I think burnout is real in craft beer right now, and it's important to dedicate in time to the human side of things. Check in with your team, give them the tools for success, make sure that they are doing okay, because we are seeing a lot of turnover in both front of house and back of house. And there's people even leaving the industry these days. But if you're able to create an experience that people crave, people will want to stick around longer. And, I will share a little data on this because it's something I actually dove through last week. And, I've been preaching experience in hospitality and everything that I talk about. But, what I did last week, I have this data set from 2017 to essentially present, and I broke it down between 2017 to 2020 pre-pandemic, 2021 to 2022, then 2022 to 2024. And I was just curious, Chris, how the importance of engagement has changed over those years. So what I did, I looked at how much people were spending in high versus low engagement videos in each segment of those years. So in 2017 to 2020, when you look at the low engagement visits versus the high engagement visits, the guests that were receiving a high level engagement, they were spending 14% more than the guests who got the low level of engagement. So a little bit of uptick, but really not a huge amount. Then you go slightly after the pandemic, we're looking 21, 22. You saw people who received a high level of engagement versus low level of engagement spend 30% more on those visits. So you're seeing people value the experience side of things, that engagement you get from across the bar. Then you look at 2022 to present, when you look at the high engagement versus low engagement, when a guest in a tap room receives that high level of engagement now, they're going to spend 40% more than the guest who receives that low level of engagement. So looking at those trends the past 7 years, I think it truly does speak to how the philosophy of our industry has changed. No longer are we in the beer business. We're in the hospitality business. We're in the business of selling experiences. We're in the relationship business. And that's why the human side of it is so important. And to go back to what you said about, for outside sales, we were looking at all these numbers. We were focusing on how we can grow. You have to be doing it in your own tap room because that's where you have the highest margins and the biggest opportunity to create those one-on-one relationships. Not everyone now, and barely anyone actually, can be the next big regional, statewide, national player. But you can own the mile around your tap room by being an integral part of your community. And you can expand it outward by building those relationships. And that's where you need to be dedicating your time.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to hear I mean, it's not that long ago in terms of 7 years ago, but the almost tripling of the importance or the sort of delta between low and high engagement content. It just shows that, like, hey, this is more important. It's more of a motivating factor for consumers than it was before. I mean, that alone just says you need to, invest in this. You need to get your staff sharp on it. The product doesn't sell itself anymore, which
And when you look
is
at the staff
a good
who are
lesson.
in breweries these days, it doesn't just need to be the beer nerd who already knows a ton about craft behind the bar. It needs to be someone with that personality who likes to talk to people, they're open to conversations, they know how to educate. I had a conversation recently, and it turned out a couple people in the circle were previous elementary and preschool teachers. And we
Hmm.
joked about what beer can learn from preschool teachers because it teaches people how to jump in circles, how to control a crowd, how to teach them really basic concepts. And I also spoke to someone up in Vermont yesterday, and I'm lucky to have all these conversations, Chris. Over the years, I've met so many awesome people in the industry, and my goal is really just soak in something from them that I can pass along. And there's this brewery in Vermont, and Vermont's known for historically having really great beer. And a lot of people who drink beer in Vermont, yeah, they are those stereotypical beer nerds that help build this industry. But you still have the people showing up to tap rooms who've never had a hazy IPA before. So what this
Hmm.
brewery does is they offer two descriptions of the beer on the menu. The first description is the really technical description that the brewer's going to give. It talks about the hop profile, the maltiness of it, the mouthfeel, all those things that the new consumers, like, what language are we speaking? Then what they do, they have the person's wife or the other person on the team give their take on it. They just make it so simple to understand. That way, if
Yeah.
I came in there and was explaining to someone who knew nothing about beer, you just stick to more basic flavor terms. You stick to, if you like, being outside on a summer day after you cut the grass, this beer might be for you. It made it much more approachable. And I think that's so important in today's state of the industry.
Oh, I love that as a strategy, right? This is you're not just having one pitch. You get to, in a very playful way, right? You're speaking to different those customer personas. You say, if you're a spec person, if you're a person who wants to know all the technical aspects, if you're the person who's really in it for the product, great. If you're a person who's in it for experience, or if you're, if you engage with our product and you're here because, man, this beer, like, this is a, hot, sweaty day, and you want something that's, you can drink one and feel refreshed. This is for you. If you want something that's, end of a tough day and you're sitting at home and you're, on your couch, this is like great. That's awesome to be able to have both of that in occupying the same place. It doesn't have to be an either or. I don't know. That's an interesting thing. As a person
I
who used to
learned
write beer descriptions, it's tough.
Yeah, and I learned something from another peer in the industry. And so often we've all had it. You go to the brewery, you go to the tap room. Okay, well, Chris, what do you like? That's a fine question, but on a hot summer day, I like imperial stouts, but I probably don't want to drink an imperial stout when it's 95 degrees outside and I'm just soaked
Hmm.
in sweat. The question this person taught me was to ask, what are you in the mood for? Which I love so much because while I might like those imperial stouts, I'm not in the mood for the imperial stout. When you think about
Yeah.
mood, you're thinking about what I need at that moment right now. And I think that's the question we should be asking.
Yeah. And I think all those little tricks, right? Phrases of, hey, can I get you another one? If somebody's ringing out, hey, do you want to grab anything to go today? Those simple tips and tricks, right? That you're giving the customer more of what they want. If they're on the fence, you're going to get them to yes. Great. Are there any, like, so this is coming down to that, staff side about, right, making sure that you're equipping your team to be successful. I mean, all of this is data driven, so you have the numbers to back this up. But if people are looking for that experience, you need to equip your staff to be able to deliver that. How do companies, or would you suggest companies think about if they're bringing on a new person, or if they want to do a staff training to get their staff sharper on these things, to give them the tools they need to actually move the needle on some of these numbers?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's something I think so many breweries are trying to figure out right now. I think your relationship with the new staff member, it appears even before you hire them. When they see your job ad that explains your company, it shows the responsibilities. They need to understand your ethos before either of you realize that this is a good or bad fit. Then when you choose to hire them, there needs to be those more corporate terms of, like, onboarding. They need to walk through the process of knowing how things work at your brewery. I'm a big fan of checklists. So when you get that team, you're onboarding them, go over even the silly things. If they're working in your tap room, where's the mop? Where's the light switch? Where are the little things that they might be afraid to ask the question because it seems like so common sense, but it's actually important to them doing a good job working for you. But really, after the training portion of it, it comes down to, like, a much bigger question. Our industry's seen so many different products being served at tap rooms that we never thought we would see. I haven't mentioned seltzers yet, but that's, an arguably controversial one in the world of beer forever. But, like, how do you get your staff to care? How is the person who loves, the crispest lager, the great, imperial stouts on a dark winter day? How do you get that person to want to sell, a seltzer or an RTD to that 22-year-old who's never been to a brewery before? And I think it really starts at the top. Brewery owners and managers, you have to show that you care, that this is important to you. If you write off seltzers, oh, it's just something we sell because we have to sell, they're probably not going to want to sell it too much. But you really have to find the ways to get your team to care and excited as you are. And it starts with you as the leader. It really does come down to education. There's so many breweries that I interact with that don't have a lot of meetings. Meetings is kind of a boring word to say, but meetings are important, whether you're talking about the new beers we have on tap, the new procedures they need to follow. There needs to be reasons behind these meetings that need to be organized, and they need to be regular. So many breweries will do a meeting. And for example, there was a brewery I've worked with in Virginia before, and they'd been in operation 2 years when this happened, and they'd never had a team meeting. I got their front of house and I got their back of house staff together at the same time for the first time. And we talked a lot about taproom training tips, but it was had a dual purpose. It allowed the brewer to educate their team on what they're currently serving in the taproom and get that one time individually with the team to kind of talk about each beer and how we can sell it. But one question that I asked this group that I was fascinated by, and it really comes down to motivation, and we talk a lot about to go beer, is what's going to get your team to do something? And what I was curious about is what's going to get this staff of about 10 people to want to sell more crowlers, growlers, cans, bottles, whatever on a Saturday afternoon. So we went around the room and we just asked. I said, hey, Chris, what's going to make you sell more of this? Some people said a gift card to a local restaurant. Some people said low fills. Some people said maybe a new brewery t-shirt. But at the end of the day, all they wanted was a $20 Chick-fil-A gift card to the person who sold the most crowlers on a Saturday afternoon. Literally, one person was going to get this, but it's going to motivate everybody on your team
Mhm.
to kind of get behind it a little bit more. And I think it kind of really comes down to asking questions. Ask your team what they need, how you can better their experience. Because if you understand what they're looking for, you can better craft that customized experience. Because everybody behind your bar on your team is going to be a little bit different. And it's important you take the time to get to know them. That way you can give them and deliver on what they're looking for. But then you get your staff asking those questions. Hey, Chris, would you like another? Would you like to take some to go? When you get everybody being a little bit more curious, you can see success. And as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you don't want to tell your team a billion things to do at once. Give them
Mhm.
one goal at a time. Tell them the data of why they need to do it, how it's going to benefit them, and how to do it. Role playing sometimes can be a little silly, but finding that script that's not going to be robotic. The phrasing you like to say, hey, Chris, you really enjoyed that lager. You want to take some to go? Oh, by the way, did you know we actually make our own beer on site? Because believe it or not, some people don't know that breweries make the beer on site. You need to
Mhm.
educate those first time guests and say, and you can take some home too. Finding the ways to ask these questions one goal at a time, I think can see results all around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to try to wrap all this up into one point here, but I think it's, the importance of stopping down, assessing things, right? Tracking the performance of things, and then making sure that you're equipping your team to actually undertake the activities or whatever the intervention that's going to move the needle, right? You need to know exactly what it is you're asking them to do and why it's right for you, knowing what's happening in the big world, but also what's happening with you. Every company is a little bit different, and important to know the big trends, but I think digging in and seeing what's really happening it's hard to make the time for that sometimes when you're running, 100 miles an hour. You need to stop down, take those meetings. I know a lot of
You
people
have
get
to
into this
be
industry because they don't
intentional.
like meetings, but it's important.
Again, it comes down to
So
that
I know
intentionality.
yeah, and I know we're nearing the end of our time here, but I wanted to make sure I had a chance to ask you about the conference that you're going to be organizing this fall. It's the first time around. Can you tell us a little bit about when, where it is, and what people can expect?
Yeah, so I went to the North Carolina Brewers Conference last November, and there was 400 to 500 people from all across the state there. It felt like a family reunion of sorts. And I came back with a ton of energy because Virginia, we have the 11th most breweries in the country. A stat that I love is we actually have more breweries in Oregon, which is kind of mind-blowing in many ways because you think of Oregon as being, one of the epicenters of craft beer in our country. But we have so many breweries, we've never had our own conference. And while, I love the opportunity to connect like this, there's something special being face to face, learning with your peers. So, what we're doing this September 16th, 17th, and 18th, we're going to all join in Richmond, Virginia for essentially 2.25 days of educational sessions. We've got 30 educational sessions. Mitch Steele, who's a legend in the industry, he's with New Realm Brewing. He's going to be giving a keynote. We've got Julie Rhodes of Not Your Hobby Marketing Solutions, going to be talking about marketing, everything that she's great at in the sales world. And then we're going to have nearly 30 other additional sessions for you to learn from. There's going to be a brewing track. There's going to be a business track. There's going to be a more intimate innovations track. There's going to be a trade show. No longer do you have to go all the way out to the larger conferences, but you get that one-on-one time here to get to know vendors who want to see you succeed. Then one of my favorite parts is the time to get to know each other. So we're going to have nightly receptions. We're going to be at Bingo Beer. We're going to be at Hardywood. And I'm super excited for our closing bottle share, where everyone from across the state and everybody here today, hope you're there, is you're just going to bring bottles and share them and get feedback from your peers and enjoy the moment together. And that's this September 16, 17, 18 in Richmond. Simply go to virginiabrewersconference.com to learn more. And thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it sounds really great. It's obviously, I always love having you on because these conversations are great, and I can only imagine what 2+ days of sessions like this would would mean
Be
to companies. So
inspiring. Everybody's going to hopefully leave with the actionable strategies they want to take back to their brewery to be more successful.
yeah, well, very exciting, and really appreciate your time, Andrew, and all of your insights. It's always interesting to speak with you and learn from you. So appreciate the time. And thank you all for joining us for today's discussion on tasting room trends. If you're interested in receiving assistance from the Craft Beverage Assistance Program, one-on-one consultations, you can visit our page on virginiasbdc.org. And as Sheila mentioned, we have our next session already lined up next month with Julie Rhodes, actually about the state of distribution.
Julie's fantastic.
Wonderful speaker, sort of the other side of the coin here. We're talking about outside your own walls, so it'll be a great thing. But just like to say thank you all again for joining, and thank you, Andrew, for your time and expertise.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Andrew. This is wonderful, Andrew. We actually had someone drop in the chat that this was great information, and thanking you for your time. So thank you. I also would like to thank everyone who attended today and remind you that you will receive an email with a link to the recording. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars, like the one on the 28th of August, or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. And we do hope to see you all at our next session. Take care, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye now.